ChronoMaster continues as read by the bathroom reader. I am covering for the Plurality Report, who has since integrated with the fine, respectable peoples of North Sentinel Island. Chapter 17. You know I do, Milo, Korda said sternly. His tone was calm, even slightly pedantic, but his mind was racing. Milo? Milo had been one of his best students during the time, about 30 years ago, when Korda tried to pay his debt to the profession by passing on the knowledge he himself had learned from people like Charlie Bell. Most of the students dropped out when they realized that full mastery of the art of universe creation and design took at least a century, although the rewards and opportunities to practice would begin much sooner, within 2 decades or so. Milo had been one of those rare talents who looked as if he would beat the averages and take mastery in as little as 5 decades. He had discipline and possessed a deep well of odd knowledge that helped him perceive the intricacies of universe design. Then, after about 5 years, barely enough time to learn the basics, Milo had dropped out of the course and out of sight. Rumors said that he'd met a girl. She was rich, and that her parents were, and that she was pregnant, that Milo had eloped with her and her family had assassins on his tail, so he'd been forced into hiding. Not believing the stories, for one, Korda had never noticed Milo pay any woman more than casual court. Korda himself had privately looked for the younger man, but could find no trace of him. Ultimately, Korda's respect for individual privacy made him abandon the search. Milo's disappearance receded from his attention to become one of the small mysteries that he pulled out, mused over, and then forgot again. Yes, Milo, I want to hear your story, Korda said, aware that Milo was watching him with a cool impassivity that did not hide a predatory gleam in his hazel eyes. Then help me put Fortuna into stasis, Milo said. I want to have time to tell you my story. Alacra's cardinal points are searching for us, but it's a sure bet that Alacra never revealed the precise location of this room to them. They may have bottled time, Korda countered. I'm certain that some of them do, Milo replied, but not all of them, and even those who have bottled time will need to watch how far they range. We can sit within the sphere of one bottle while I fill you in and so conserve our resources. Jester had remained unwontedly quiet, but when Korda glanced up at her, she bobbed a shrug. I've been monitoring what communication channels I can, but I don't think anyone is even close. Will you help me, teacher? Milo said. Korda studied the other man. If this was Milo, he did want to hear his story, to have the mystery resolved after so long, but something was still troubling him, making him unwilling to accept Milo's plan. How do I know you really are Milo? He said. I have seen you change your appearance here. Earlier you were Glyphnote Garu. How do I know this isn't another disguise, something you set up when you knew I was after you? Milo chuckled, seemed to relax slightly, as if he now was certain that Korda would listen. How about I tell you something that someone else wouldn't be likely to remember? Something from our common experience that wouldn't have been written up in any of the biographies of the great Rene Korda? Korda nodded. Milo had always enjoyed needling Korda about his past successes, about his fame as the best of the human universe designers. For the first time, he wondered if Milo had realized that Korda was slowing down even then, heading for retirement. Could the acid jokes have been meant to stir him into action again, to keep him from getting too comfortable? Go on, Milo, he said, struggling to hide his thoughts, to hide the surge of liking he felt for the younger man. Back when I was in your class, after the deadbeats had dropped out, there was a girl in our class, a perky little blonde. I always thought she was sweet on you, and I thought you might be a bit sweet on her. Though, of course, you were too professional to date a student." Corda felt a blush creeping up from below his collar, but he didn't interrupt Milo. Milo grinned. "Her name was Courtney. You always called her Miss. She always called you—" "Stop," Corda said, holding out his hand. "That's enough. I'm certain you are Milo. Someone might have gotten the students' names from the registrar. The rest, I believe you." "Don't you want me to finish? Courtney always called you—" "No, that's really enough," Corda said lamely. "Sugar Pop?" Chester said. "That's it exactly," Milo said, mistaking Jester's words as an attempt to finish his sentence rather than an address to Corda. "Please," Corda said to them both. "I believe you are Milo. As you pointed out, we may be running out of time. Let's get this universe shut down." Shrugging a faint grin at having flustered the great Rene Corda, still lurking in the corners of his mouth, Milo extended the multicolored pyramid to Corda. "It's a puzzle of some sort. I'm stuck. It changes in some strange fashion. I guess knowing something of how Alacra thinks, that it's tied to some odd rule of probability." Corda set the pyramid on the desk. "You've apparently grown so accustomed to using your own wits to solve things, Milo, that you've forgotten that tools provide some excellent shortcuts." He took out his universe tool and punched for the probability driver. After tapping it against the pyramid, he reached out and followed the impulse to twist one section, aligned it with another, twist again, and so forth until the pyramid unfolded flat on the desk. As soon as it flattened out, an array of controls was visible. Corda tapped them in a sequence he felt rather than knew, and there was a popping noise as the wall behind the sofa vanished, revealing the world key controls. Jester zipped in ahead. "The floor is a bit wet, so walk carefully. I'd guess that it was filled with water to baffle scanners into thinking this was a solid space. Sure baffled me." Milo paused a moment before following Corda and Jester into the control room. Once the shutdown sequence was well underway, he glanced over at Corda. "Didn't you feel that using the probability driver was a less elegant solution?" Corda shrugged. "Maybe. But let me put it to you this way. You're on the bottom floor of a house, and you need to get to the attic. Which is the more elegant solution, using the staircase or cutting holes in the floor and climbing up through them?" "I see what you're getting at. Thanks, teacher." There was no sarcasm in Milo's tone. Corda turned away to hide his smile. Milo was clearly brilliant, but sometimes that brilliance could be blinding. After the universe of Fortuna had been put into stasis, Corda and Milo returned to the office and took seats on the sofa close enough that one unit of bottled time set between them would keep them both out of stasis. Jester assured them that the cognac in the crystal decanter on the sideboard was an excellent vintage, something of an art piece in itself. While Milo poured a splash for each of them into balloon snifters fine as soap bubbles, Corda subvocalized a quick request to Jester that she contact Miriam, Tico, and Arabu and reassure them that he was alive and on the job. Then he turned his attention to Milo. Corda knew he'd always think of the other man as younger. Indeed, he couldn't be much more than 60 or 70 even now. But there was an aura of age and weariness in Milo's eyes that a lifetime course of prolongation drugs could not hide. However, he had spent those years. Milo's life had clearly not been a peaceful or gentle one. Taking a small taste of his cognac without any further introduction, Milo began his story. "I was born in the Siswig system on the planet Pasqua. It was a good place to grow up. Back when my parents were small, the system had been purchased by a group of venture capitalists who sunk their money in having one planet, Pasqua, terraformed into something of an idealized pastoral Earth. There were forests, wide strips of agricultural land, mountains, oceans. Well, teacher, you get the idea. You've designed places like Pasqua often enough. Corda nodded. I have. And Milo, why not try Renee? It's my name, and you're welcome to use it. After all, we are friends. Another sip of cognac covered Milo's momentary shyness. Thanks, Renee. I appreciate your accepting me as a friend, even before you hear why I've done what I have. Well, Corda said, I haven't said that I approve, but I want to hear your side before I do something as pompous as say I approve or disapprove. Fair enough? Fair enough, Milo answered. Then, clearing his throat, he continued. The Siswig system's economy was largely based around exploiting the system's mineral and metal resources, but not in the usual fashion. The colony's founders had learned something from the history of other colonial ventures. They were determined that Siswig would not export raw materials for others to grow rich on. Instead, they built factories on both of Pasqua's moons, and the colonists turned out finished products. By the time I was born, Siswig was flourishing. I lived on Pasqua with my parents and my grandmother, Dolby, until I was 12. Then, everything changed. Corda had been remembering why the name Pasqua had sounded familiar while Milo spoke. But he kept his silence and subvocalized for Jester to do the same. If his guess was right, Milo not only needed to talk, this was the first time he was permitting himself to tell about a horror that all of civilized space spoke of in hushed whispers, a horror to which Milo might be the only eyewitness. I was 12 when the pirates made their attack. The slaughter that has been named the Pasqua Wipeout, Milo said, his expression suddenly vulnerable. My parents were at work. My father on the moon, Felix. My mother as director of urban planning in the nearby city of Rhett. I was standing out in the yard watching the skies. Rhett had a spaceport, so I was familiar with many designs of spacecraft, but on that particular day there had been more activity than I had ever seen before. Innocent that I was, I had no idea that we were being invaded, that the bright flash I had seen a few hours before upon Felix was my father dying, along with the factory he ran. Communications were jammed. Houses on Siswig were usually built with acres of land between them. There was room, and with personal hover cars from our own factories widely available, that there was no need to cram together. The look on Grandma Dolby's face as she came out of the house, a suitcase in her hand, was the first hint I had that anything had gone wrong. Milo, she said sternly, come with me. We can't wait for your parents. I obeyed. Milo continued with a slight smile. You didn't argue with Grandma Dolby when she used that tone of voice. She'd been a Ditzin commando, a colonel, and she could put a command snap to her voice that made your feet move before you knew that you had even agreed. She drove our family hovercar into the hills outside Rhett and then into the mountains. As we drove, she explained to me what was happening. Pirates had come to Siswig, she told me. They had been in trouble for a while, but our people had always been strong enough to fight off their little raids. Our continual refusal to pay them protection or to give up our goods without a fight had made us an example to other systems. More and more systems were rallying, were refusing to be cowed. For being an example of courage, for refusing to let the pirates rob us, or to use the Siswig system as a jump-off point for other raids, the pirates had decided that we must die. Corda put his hand on the younger man's shoulder. Milo, I know something of the history of that event. If you don't want to go into the details, I can review my data banks. Fiercely, his lip curling as he fought not to weep, Milo shook his head. No, Renee. I have to tell you how it was, for me. That way you will understand not only what I have done, but what I have become. Please. Time has stopped for everyone but a small handful. Let me tell you how it was. Jester cut in. No sign of pursuit closing, boss. Corda squeezed Milo's shoulder once more, and then let his hand drop. Milo, I wasn't trying to stop you from talking. I was trying to save you a painful retelling. Managing a small, unconvincing grin, Milo finished his cognac and set the snifter down. "Thanks, Renee, but I've lived with this pain for the most of my life." "Talk then," Corda said. "Jester will warn us if anyone is getting close." "Good." Milo rubbed his hands across his face. "I'm beat. It's been a long road Grandma Dolby set my feet on. She got me away, you see, up into the mountains where caves and tunnels remained from the earliest days of the colony." "Yes, she got me away up into the mountains where caves and tunnels remained from the earliest days of the colony, when mining was still done on Pasqua itself. She saved me, but she didn't spare me. From a shielded area, she had me watch as the pirates destroyed Rhett and my mother. On a view screen, we watched the pirates herding people from isolated areas into transports. I learned later that most of them were sold in the slave warrens of Galu. Later, I hunted down a few of these slaves, hoping to find allies among the survivors, and learned that before being sold, they had been mind-wiped. After all the cities had been looted and bombed flat, the people and crops taken or killed, the pirates finished their conquest of Pasqua by melt mining it from orbit. "Melt mining," Corda explained. "That wasn't in any of the reports." "Probably lost in the rest of the horrors," Milo said. "It's almost meant the end for Grandma Dolby and me. The tunnels in which we hid were right in a metal-rich area. When the first heat rays came down, she realized what they intended and got us into the car. We hid in the bottom of an ocean for a week. Now remember, all we had was a family sedan and the supplies that Grandma had packed. Not exactly a recipe for survival. She used drugs from her kit to keep me under so I wouldn't use too much air or realize I was starving to death. She couldn't give herself the same luxury. Her commando implants were still in place and she reactivated them, although at her age she could no longer tolerate their demands. With those implants she was able to scout, to find us food, and when the pirates finally left, to keep us both alive. I firmly believe that her death was as much by the pirates' hand as if they had cut her throat, for she could have lived at least another century in peace." Milo dashed away tears. He didn't seem to realize that he was weeping. "After the pirates left, Grandma took us back onto land. We lived for 6 months in that burnt-out ruin of what had once been one of the most beautiful and prosperous worlds in Universe Prime. During that time, Grandma collected whatever information she could about the pirates. From armor and ruined vehicles, she confirmed the commanders' identities. From a chance scrap of a log, she garnered a hint as to their destination. All the while she was dealing with her own grief, her sense that she should have saved the rest of her family and friends with me. I wasn't much help. My week of near starvation, combined with shock, weakened my system. I caught a virus, probably a bit of leftover biological weaponry the pirates had used, that nearly killed me. Gradually I recovered. About 6 months after the wipeout, a tramp trader who hadn't heard the news came in system. Grandma signaled him, and we were rescued. She paid for our passage to a nearby system where her sister lived. Then she set about planning our revenge. Her first hope was that she could find the pirates' main base, but this was quickly dashed. Research confirmed that not one but 7 different pirate fleets had taken part in the wipeout. She wouldn't go to the Terran regional government with her findings because experience had shown the colonies that the pirates often paid government officials to slow investigations or pass on information. Corda frowned. "I seem to recall that after the Pasqua wipeout, the Terran regional government instituted a crackdown on pirate activity. The pirates have never regained their foothold since then." Grandma had her own theory about that crackdown. Spinning his brandy snifter between his fingers, Milo paused. "When she couldn't locate the pirates on her own, she made friends of some of the TRG troops who were going after the pirate bases. From them she learned that their raids were being based on inside information." Jester was quick to catch the implications. "You mean someone was fingering the pirates for a fall?
Gee, I wonder who would profit from that. Maybe the people who got the benefit of the Pasqua wipeout?
You and Grandma Dolby think a lot alike, Jester. She deduced that after using their fleets to rape Pasqua and the rest of the Siswig system, the pirate chiefs quickly realized that those same fleets had become a liability rather than an asset. I can see why. First, the fleets would want to share of their loot, more dangerously, from the pirate chief's point of view. Far too many people knew their secret. Someone might decide to buy amnesty by giving evidence to the TRG.
The TRG was also offering a substantial reward for information, said Milo. I don't doubt that the pirate chiefs themselves collected it for turning in their own people. What all this meant to Grandma Dolby and me was that we needed to focus our search on a few people rather than on fleets. Grandma knew that vengeance would probably take longer than she had left to live. Therefore, I must be the avenger.
Milo set his glass down, looked as if he would rise and pace, then noted the limitations of the bottled time and leaned back again. She put me on a course of education designed to turn me into a one-man army against the pirates, but martial skills were not enough. I had to be able to find the pirates, and when I did so, neutralize their defenses. We had a feeling that they would take refuge in pocket universes, so when I was ready, I became your student, Renee. He bared his teeth in a humorless grin. Even here, I'd be willing to bet you never realized that your quiet student was a death arts master, trained by the warrior priests of Galbron, or that he could shift his features into a dozen different guises. I have acted with the Royal Shakespeare Company to great reviews, walked the busy halls of the Terran Regional Stock Exchange, and smuggled exotic cargoes through the heavily guarded asteroid belts that surrounded the Religious Alliance worlds.
And all this to avenge the death of Pasqua?
All of it, Milo asserted.
I am the last of the people of Siswig. My life is not my own. It belongs to those who died because they had the courage to resist the pirates.
Corda gazed into the single amber drop of cognac that remained in the bottom of his glass, but it did not offer him any vision of the best course of action. He knew that Milo was waiting for him to ask the next question, the self-evident question, and he knew that if he did, he would be accepting that on some level Milo had the right to do what he was doing. Vendetta. A pretty word for an ugly course of action. But was it any uglier than what had been done to the Siswig system? The answer to that question was easy. It was not. Milo and his grandma claimed to simply be attempting to be agents of justice in a universe, in many universes, that would close its ears to their plea. They had been wrong, had they been wrong, for not trying to work within the system instead of outside it? Quite possibly. But Rene Corda was a man with 3 centuries behind him. He had lost the automatic belief that the system worked for everyone within his first 5 decades, briefly regained it when he reached a point where the system catered to his needs, and then lost that belief again when he saw that the system accorded his new fame and wealth honors that it did not grant everyone else. He asked the question for which Milo was patiently waiting. And the owners of God's pockets?
Are the 7 pirate chiefs, Milo responded promptly. They took their money and had private universes designed, one each to suit their particular tastes. I believe that the initial design work was in place before the Pasqua wipeout. They intended their long course of murder and betrayal in advance.
And now? Corda asked.
I have found their secrets. My plan is to go to each pocket universe, shut it down, and then where all are in stasis and they cannot reinforce each other, return and collect my enemies. Herbs and Aarons. Corda felt uncomfortable when he realized that he was going to need to tell Milo that some of his work had been undone. He waited, letting Milo finish outlining his plan. Those pirate chiefs I can capture, I will put in digital storage on the Shrike and bring them, along with copies of all the evidence that Grandma Dolby and I collected, to the Terran regional government. Enough time has passed that I believe the pirates lack allies there.
Corda cleared his throat. And what about those you cannot capture, Milo?
Then they die, as Pasqua died, as all of the Siswig system died, Milo answered, his hazel eyes hard as marble. Actually, they will die more pleasantly, for I have no taste for torture, only for revenge. Revenge is a dish best served cold, Jester quoted, then added, After all these years, this dish is getting rancid. No, Chester, Milo said. I prefer to compare this to a fine wine, something that needs to age to perfection before being consumed. Corda looked around Alakra's private lair, and his imagination tinted all the beautiful pictures with blood, sculpted all the figures in bone. Was this the filter through which Milo had seen his entire life? I only hope, Milo, Corda said at last, that when you open this bottle, you won't find that the wine has turned to vinegar. Milo nodded, something in the lines of his face telling Corda that he had not overlooked the possibility. Then he brightened. Does this mean that you aren't going to try to stop me? He asked. I doubt that I could, Corda said levelly. I am talented, but I am not a master of the death arts, nor have I trained my entire life for this one cause. I might delay you, but short of killing you, I could not stop you. Milo frowned. I had hoped that you would at least understand why I do what I do. I do, Corda admitted. I accept your story as true, and I accept your right to your mission. Forgive me, but 3 centuries of essentially law-abiding existence make one a bit set in one's ways.
The key word there,
Jester wrote on his read line,
is essentially. Don't be so pompous. I want to help him, so I know that you do, too. Tell him, we may have stopped time, but we won't be safe forever. Alakra may not be able to find us, but our ships are in plain sight. Erebu, Miriam, and Tico would make great hostages.
Corda shivered. He had been so caught up in Milo's story in the silence of the universe beyond their little bubble of time that he had forgotten how vulnerable they were. He doubted that Milo had and mentally awarded the younger man kudos for his patience. He also understood why Milo had been so patient. You need me, Corda said bluntly. Not just because I could stop you or delay you, but because this job is too big for one person, right? Right, Milo said. I need an ally, and I respect you and trust your ethics. Before you trust me too far, Corda said, I should tell you that I've been trailing you through herbs and Aurons. Both universes are active again. Detir and Dwister are not trapped in stasis, waiting to be collected like ripe apples for your basket. Damn! Milo swore. I thought I had them. Corda held up a hand. I think you underestimated how paranoid the pirate chiefs were. Even though decades have passed since the Pasqua wipeout, both of them were equipped with bottled time and some formidable personal defenses. I doubt if they feared you or someone like you. I suspect that what they fear is each other. Milo nodded. True. Having joined first to destroy a solar system, then to betray their own followers, they must live in a constant awareness of how vulnerable they are. Vulnerable, Chester said, even in a private universe. I guess this is what they mean when they say that the wicked flee where none pursue. Except, Milo said, staring at the floor, anger visible in every line of his tense body, that I pursue. Renee, I understand why you did what you did. I made a misjudgment with those universes. I was more afraid of news traveling ahead of me than I was of those I meant to capture. I might have pulled it off if the regatta hadn't delayed me here. I don't know. Corda touched him lightly on the arm. Milo, you are past the time where you can pause for recrimination and analysis.
Let's move on Alacra. Then we'll decide what to do next." When Milo looked up at him, Cordo was surprised to see a momentary brightness, as of tears held back, glittering in the other man's eyes.
"Then you're with me, Renee?" Milo said, gratitude evident in his voice.
"I'm with you," Cordo said.